Hello, everyone. I'm Rick Zanotti, and welcome to eLearnChat. This show doesn't have a number. This is our tribute to a good friend who passed away almost a year ago today, on December 1st, 2011. Terrence Wing, who was the original co-host on the show, passed away, and we're just remembering him today. We're remembering him in a positive light, all the things that he did, not only as a friend, but as a professional. And joining us today is Dawn Mahoney. She's at an undisclosed location in Canton Airport, right?
Yes, I'm in the business center.
Yep. If at any moment she gets taken away by TSA, we don't know her.
Thanks a lot.
We're all friends, right? and we're also joined by the inimicable Patty Shank. Hey, Patty, how are you?
Hi there.
So
doing really well.
Great. And actually, I guess we all have something a little bit in common. I think Terrence introduced most of us in one way or another.
He did.
And so that's fun. And it's interesting. It's been a year since Terrence passed away. And for those of you who don't know, who maybe are new to the show or didn't know Terrence, he was a very active person in a lot of different things. He was in the ASTD. He was in part of the international, board on that. He worked on putting the shows together. I met Terrence through Trish Yule, who one day sent me a note saying, "Here's somebody you got to meet. You'll love him." and sure enough, I think we talked on the when did we talk? I guess we talked over the phone once. And it's funny how preconceptions go, because when I first talked with him, Terrence Wing, I went to a school that had a lot of Chinese people. Wing was a real common Chinese name. And I'm looking at his picture on Twitter, and I go, he could be. You never know. So so when we had breakfast for the very first time, he shows up, and I go, "Are you Chinese?" and Terrence started laughing because he goes, No, I'm actually, partly from the islands. I go, Jamaica, okay. I go, so does that mean you're not Chinese? And so we went through the thing, and he was laughing, and we had a good time on that. And he was the Wing from the other side, not the Chinese side. And that was one of our initial conversations. The very first time I met him, it was just one of those, when we finished our meeting, I told my wife who was with us, I said, yeah, we should get him into the company. We should have him become a partner or something. And she was looking at me and go, we just met him. It's been like 2 hours. I go, I know, I feel good about him. And that's kind of how that relationship went. And we had done eLearnChat earlier. I had done it by myself with just audio interviews. And what we did is we would put a picture on the audio and put it up on YouTube in 4 or 5 sections. It really didn't work very well. And I said, yeah, maybe we should do this differently with video, and I should probably get a co-host. And at that moment, I asked Terrence, hey, Terrence, you want to be a co-host? I think he had a mic in his hand before I finished. So he was good to go, and we started the show. I think we did almost 50 episodes together, real close to that, 47 maybe. And so it was, for us, for me as a friend and as somebody that we co-worked together, we also did projects together. We did a lot of stuff together. It was pretty shocking that a guy at 42, who's basically in good health, great spirits, just left. And it happens, and he had a silent killer. It was arrhythmia. His heartbeat was not steady, and he was at a gym right in his condo complex when it happened. And the interesting thing was there was a doctor or nurse there. They could not bring him back. The paramedics couldn't bring him back, and it was his time. I think that's just what it was, and he left a good legacy for a lot of us. Not only did he leave a good friendship, but he left a lot of stuff behind. And Patty, you worked a little bit with Terrence. I think you were involved with him on things. What are some of the things you remember about Terrence, and how did Terrence's spirit, if you will, affect you?
Well, after he left, I was in a funk for months. I don't think anyone's affected me who has left my life like that has affected me in such a big way. Terrence was a connector. I met a lot of people through Terrence, and I have one really funny story to tell. Terrence and I talked on Skype quite a bit, and I remember the first time I talked to him, I noticed that he had a number of my books right behind him on his bookshelf. And what was really funny is we were both very tentative in talking to each other. And I'm one of those people that if I have a question to ask you, I'll just I'm very direct. So I just said to him, I said, "Hey, Terrence, are you worried about talking to me?" And he said, "Well, I don't know if you noticed, but I have a bunch of your books behind me." And I said, "Yeah?" And he said, "Well, I kind of expected you to be arrogant." And I started laughing hysterically. I said, "I don't know if you know this about me, but given my druthers, I'd kind of hole up in my office and just like write books and probably never talk to people because I'm kind of afraid of the world." And he said, "Really? I just figured you were on top of the world." And I said, "Really? I figured you were on top of the world." And he said, "Really? I figured you were on top of the world." And the two of us started laughing hysterically, and we both had tears streaming down our faces. And from that moment on, we realized, I don't know, we started talking about the fact that people always figure the other guy always has more. You know, the other guy always has it better. The other guy always has it easier. And we realized at that moment kind of a universal truth that no one feels more secure than other people. And we kind of formed a bond on that Skype call that lasted. I only knew him in that way. I mean, we had said hello to each other and waved to each other across conference halls, but I had only really talked to him deeply that way for maybe 6 months. Yeah. And then we saw each other at DevLearn, and then he died. And it really affected me because there aren't that many people that you talk to in that deep way. And then we talked to each other on Facebook, and he had posted some things on Facebook that were really deep. And I got to know him in a deep way. And I really like getting to know people in a deep way and not a superficial way. And he affected me very deeply.
Yeah, and the one thing about Terrence, and this is funny, this is something that I've talked to a lot of people about. Every one of us thought he only had time for us because he was busy all the time. And yet, when you had a phone conversation, I've been on the phone 2, 3, 4 hours straight with him. And that happened often. I mean, we were just on the phone a lot, and I was going, I wonder when he gets any work done. And a lot of us thought the same thing. And as I actually, after he passed away, I talked to so many other people who all had the same experience. Terrence was a guy who always made time for you. And that's one of the things I always appreciated, that, and he was genuine. I mean, he was who he was. He enjoyed people. And if he liked you, then not only was he a connector, he was an enabler.
Yeah, he
was. He was one of those people that tried to do everything possible to make sure that you were enabled, that you met somebody that he liked.
Yeah.
You know, and Trish Yu, for example, is the same way. If she likes you, she'll introduce you to people, because that's how she is. And she and Terrence got along really well. And once I met him, he introduced me to other people. And next thing you know, we're doing the show, and we've met a ton of people through the show. And he loved the show. I mean, I'll tell you, I think he liked it much more than I did. He was always into the show. He loved doing this kind of stuff. And, you know, a lot of people don't realize, I mean, Terrence had several careers. He was a very good salesperson. He worked for a pharmaceutical company for years. He was a good salesperson. He worked in logistics and procurement for Target. A lot of people don't know that.
I didn't know that.
Then he became a leadership trainer. And he did very well at that, too. Again, good personality. He was a captain in the U.S. Army. Again, people don't realize he was an officer, and he was a gentleman. You know, you talk about an officer and a gentleman. He definitely was both. I mean, Marie always talks about, Marie is his wife, and she always talks about, here's a guy who always, when he was home, would take her downstairs, open the door for her car, and see her off in the morning, because he worked from home or a small office he had. And that's a special kind of guy. You know, he would really do that little bit extra to to care about people. Yeah. And he loved the military. One time I asked him, "What'd you leave?" He goes, they wanted to relocate me to South Korea at the time. And I think he had just gotten married maybe a year or so before that. And he says, I didn't want to leave my wife. And he got out for that. That's one of the reasons. But he always missed the camaraderie of the Army, officer corps and everything. He loved that. He really enjoyed that. He liked the discipline. He liked the rigor. And he also, I think, went to Penn State when he was stationed in the Army out there. So he graduated with his master's from Penn State. And he was a real Penn State fan, and it was sort of fun. But he put it all together. He had his Army life, and here's one thing that I like to say about certain people, and it's not a lot of people. Terrence had a very congruent life. Things fit correctly in his life. He was happy with his life. He was always looking for something different to do, and he was a little driven, and occasionally he got irritated, but he was always looking. He was always looking to do something else. I used to kid him that he was in his midlife crisis because he went through about 3 careers in about the 2.5 years I knew him. And and like you, I didn't know him for a long, long time, but a lot of people thought we knew each other for like since we were kids. We actually grew up in areas that weren't that far from each other.
Wow.
In New York. We both grew up in Queens, New York, not that far from each other. Didn't know him then. I think I was about, let's see, what am I? I'm about 16 years older than he is. So we were just going, that's pretty amazing. So we had some similarities in that. But the fun thing was he was always looking for something new. And right before he passed away, he was about to start a new venture. And in that venture, it was going to be called RELATECASTS. And it was all about, and it was a new company. I was involved with him, not at the company level, but we were probably going to do implementations for him. So he was going to do the sales and front end and the consulting and the training, and we were going to implement the systems for him. That's kind of what we were talking about. Had just started getting off the floor. He had done some videos, and I could see that was a passion. I think that one may have really kicked or taken off because in that one, he felt not only did he enjoy social media, he enjoyed teaching, learning, and management.
Yeah.
This thing combined everything because it was really installing social media systems for companies internally inside the firewall. Wow. That would be very much like a Facebook or other things so that you could keep people kind of like a Yammer, if you will. And so that was kind of where he was going. That's what he wanted to do. And it was a lot of fun. In fact, let's play a little video from Cindy Huggett. I know a lot of you probably know who Cindy is. Yeah. Cindy she's cool. She's one of the people I really like in the e-learning world. She's very just straightforward and just a good person. And she sent me the video. The video, if you can hear it live, it's a little low, and I wasn't able to get it any higher. But let's see. You'll be able to hear it in the recording. Here we go.
Cindy Huggett here, joining in the remembrance of our dear friend Terrence Wing. He is missed so much, it's hard to believe it's been a year since he left us. And when I think about Terrence, I remember sitting next to him in an ASTD conference with his warm smile and his generosity, and sitting next to him at that specific conference and that session, he was sharing so many tips on how to use Twitter. I remember him live blogging throughout, but using Twitter and teaching me how to use Twitter for more than just sharing information, but really to connect. It changed the way I use Twitter. And wasn't that so like Terrence? His generosity of spirit, his willingness to give, his willingness to share, and his willingness to encourage. And so I know when I joined Twitter every day, I think of him and I can still see his smiling face. He's so missed, and I remember him. Thanks for taking time to remember him today and join in as his spirit lives on.
Okay, and that was Cindy Huggett. Now, Cindy and oh, you know what? We lost Dawn. Let me see if I can bring her back one more time.
Call connecting.
That's what happens when someone's at an airport. Cindy, Terrence, and I had lunch we had breakfast, probably a couple of years ago. It was really fun. And again, I knew Cindy, I think, before I knew Terrence, but then I realized that he knew her too, and actually he knew everybody.
He did know everybody.
He actually knew everybody, and I'm not getting a connection, so I'll try her in a bit. But but he knew everybody, and if he knew somebody, he made sure that you knew that person, and
That's true.
that's one of the fun things. And then the next video we have is from Michelle Winkley. Now, Michelle Winkley was the HR director at MTV several years ago.
Wow.
And she went off on her own, and she does consulting work, and she helps a lot of businesses with consulting and legal issues, things like that. She's a great person, really nice person, and I know she's nice. Not only have I met her, but she has the best referral I could think of. Terrence thought she was great. Terrence thought the world of her, and many times when he was talking to me, he'd always say, "She's part of Liquid Learn." I go, "I didn't realize that she was working with you." And I think they were starting to do some work together, and that was in his mind. She was going to be part of Liquid Learn. He had her pinned down, and that's mine. I'm gonna keep her for Liquid Learn, and and she was just a good friend, and they did a lot of work together. He always said that she mentored him, and he mentored her. So it was a good business relationship, a good personal relationship. And here's a little video from Michelle that she did last night, and I think you'll kind of get a feel for that in a moment. So here we go.
Hi, my name is Michelle Winkley. Rick reached out and asked me to give my thoughts about Terrence and what has happened over the last year. Before I talk about what's happened over the last year, I need to reflect back on how Terrence and I met in our relationship. Terrence and I met at an ASTDLA meeting. He was invited to come and just check it out, but in true Terrence fashion, he jumped in with both feet and got involved. I was lucky that Terrence and I started working on a project together, and we got to know each other very quickly. What I learned is that everybody gets to know Terrence very quickly. I think he really, really enjoyed connecting with people. Through that experience, Terrence and I built a working relationship, and when I became ASTDLA president, I asked Terrence to be the president-elect, which means he'd be the president the year after I was. He turned me down the first 3 tries, but on the 4th asking, he accepted. And the following year, for me, was an amazing year. I had a thought partner. I had someone to motivate me, to bounce ideas off of. On occasion, we had a really great debate. And it felt like we were really making a difference and moving things forward. Our friendship grew outside of ASTDLA to talk about where we were going in business, talking about family, things we enjoyed, etc. I know that Terrence was quite a motivator for me, and I hope I was for him too. The reality is that I think I got the better end of the deal. In the years since his passing, I certainly think about him all the time. I spoke to him 2 or 3 times a week, and what I've learned is everybody talked to him 2 or 3 times a week. I'm not quite sure how he got any work done. But there's many times where I go to pick up the phone, or I'm in my car driving, and I feel like there's a phone call I haven't returned, and I realize that the void I'm feeling is the void where Terrence was. It was the conversations we used to have. Since I can't reach out to Terrence directly, I have now what I call the inner Terrence. It's the things, the voice that I know about, the things that he would say. It's the smile and the laugh. It's the things he would tease me about and the things that he would encourage me to do. So when I need the laugh or I'm trying to figure out what direction I'm going in, I reach for my inner Terrence. I know that this has brought me comfort, and I hope it's brought others comfort as well. Thanks, Rick, for reaching out and letting me talk about my good friend Terrence.
Okay. And
Wow.
that was Michelle Winkley. Yeah, he like I say, he loved Michelle. He thought she was just great. He always liked working with her, and she felt like a lot of us did. We always thought, are we the only people he ever talks to? He was pretty amazing. He had a lot of energy.
Right.
He made a lot of things happen in terms of his day was busy, and it was busy on people.
Yeah, it was.
He got work done, but I tell you, he was a great connector, a great friend, and if anything, when you think about something like this, here's a person who at 42 years old, pretty much in the prime of his life, was taken away or left, any way you want to look at it, and definitely too soon. But if anything else, it reminds us that life is short. You got to live it well. You got to enjoy it. Have fun when you live your life, and definitely enjoy the people that you care about,
Right.
and just have a good time with the people you care about, and make the time. That's the hardest thing. Make the time for people you care about. We're all so busy. We're all running around in 100 different directions, but ultimately, what is it? What is life? I mean, life is our connecting. It's our getting along with people. It's getting together. And Terrence liked most people. I mean, there were a couple of people he probably didn't like as much, but he didn't make a big deal of it, at least for the most part. He was a liker. He focused on the good.
What's interesting to me, Rick, is that as you get older, you find out that the most important thing in life is the people in your life. And that's what you hear over and over again about Terrence, is how important he was to people.
Yeah.
And to me, the things that people are saying about him show just how good a life he led, just by how important he was to others. And that, I feel teary-eyed just thinking about just how important he was to others.
Yeah, and what he did was he would spend the time with people. When Terrence was with you, he was with you. He wasn't with 10 other people. He wasn't thinking of the next phone call. He was with you. He was focused on you. And that's a good trait, because he's busy. I mean, we're all busy. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
But when you're with the guy like that, you realize, hey, he may be busy, but you didn't feel that way. You felt like you were one of the few people that he had time for.
Yeah.
And that's a special trait. That's something that you just value. And it's funny, it's been a year, and I talk to Marie all the time. We've gotten much closer with Marie throughout the year, his wife, and she's a great gal. We really enjoy getting together with her, and we talk about it. I go, sometimes I just don't feel he's gone. It's just really weird. Maybe it's because it was so sudden, and maybe because so many people did so many things with him. It's like, wow, that just doesn't really make sense. But that's life. If you try to make sense out of it, you won't.
Doesn't make any sense.
It just is. It just is, and sometimes it is in a way you don't like that much. But you move on. And I think the best thing to take away from Terrence is in his legacy, and what he left behind is a genuine caring for people and a genuine wanting people to succeed.
Yeah.
He didn't want people to be mediocre. He wanted them to be way better than that. And I completely agree with him. He didn't want people to stay at a level that just showed that they were surviving. I think his goal, because he always talked about, we got to be better than that. We got to be accountable. We got to be responsible. We have to be successful, and we can do it on our own. That was one of his things. He was always talking about how we can do it on our own. We don't need anybody's help in terms of other things, because do it on your own. Get help from friends, but do it on your own.
Yeah.
Have that dream. Go for it. and from that point of view, I think he did. He went for it as much as he could.
He did.
And almost everything he tried, he was fairly good at.
Yeah, he was.
And when he wasn't that good at it, he moved on to something else. He goes, you know what? I'm going to go to something else, because he didn't like being not that good at it.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I don't want to be not good. I want to be great at it. And I think his niche, the one I think he was settling on, was probably a good one. He had the sales experience. He had, and unlike a lot of salespeople, he actually was a good salesperson in terms of he wasn't out there to screw you, get a quick buck, or anything like that.
Right. He was a connector.
Yeah, he was a connector. He wouldn't sell you something if there wasn't really a fit. If he thought there was a fit, he'd go for it. And he was never a pushy kind of person. But people, he's one of those guys you buy from anyway because you like him.
That's true.
And the best kind of salesperson out there is the one that you like, you trust, and you do business with. That's right. And he was that kind of guy. So, I don't know what he's doing right now, but I'm sure he's busy. I'm sure he's stirring things up a little bit and trying to make wherever he's at a little bit better.
That's right. I'm sure that's true.
Because I think that's just how he was.
Yeah.
And today, Patty, we're going to finish up again. We did this last year, right after he passed away. We did a show for him so people kind of knew what happened and everything else. Yeah. And Leva, who I think is in the chat room, sent us something I thought was really lovely. She didn't know Terrence that well or that long, but she liked him and she liked what he was doing. She was a fan of the show from the beginning, and she was always in the show. And like she talks about, we had her come on the show, but she does. I thought something really pretty. Leva is a musician. She's an engineer, but ultimately she's a musician, and her soul speaks through her flute and her wind instruments, and so she did a little talk, and then she played an instrument. So Patty, do you have any last words that you want to talk about now? Anything in particular before we wrap up?
I just want to say we miss you, Terrence, and wherever you are, I'm jealous of who you're with. I wish you were here, but we think of you all the time. You're on my mind, and I know you're on others because we still talk about you all the time.
Yeah, it's funny. And to the Wing family, I hope you're probably going to be watching this. We love you guys, and not only did we feel for your loss, but we also felt for your gain, because you guys all had them, and it was fun. I got to meet all of them last year at the funeral, and just a lovely family, and they're all different. Everybody's very different, and yet it was just fun. Just meeting them all and feeling like, man, I feel like I know these people. It must run in the Wing family because they're all just that kind of person. They're good people. They're good folks. So anyway, let's end our little memorial to Terrence and our remembrance with Leva's last words. So here we go.
I was presented to Terrence by Rick about 1 year ago. Virtually, of course, when they started their eLearnChat project. They invited me to be their guest, and I was so shy and so nervous, but both they succeeded at calming me down. Weekly, I enjoyed chatting with Terrence and other attendees in the chat room about the subject, but also, of course, about social media. 1 month ago, at Defline, I met Terrence really for the first time. At that moment, I couldn't suspect that his first real hug would also be the last one. Thanks, Terrence. Words are now very difficult, so I took my flute. Vaarwel, vriend.